Hey everyone. I want to talk today about what does it mean to come close to Hashem. And I'm going to split this into two parts. This video is going to be about the danger of coming close to Hashem. And then the next video will be about why, even though it's dangerous and risky to come close to Hashem, why it's still desirable. Still a desirable thing to do. So let me start off by talking about what does it mean to say that Hashem is dangerous for us. I've been teaching Parshat Korach for 2 years now, and I haven't gotten to the bottom of it. But you know that throughout the Tanakh, there are many places where we see that it is potentially lethal to come in contact with God. Uzziah touches the Aron as it's being moved to Yerushalayim, dies instantly. The people of Beit Shemesh, after the Aron has been moved back to from the police team to Eretz Yisrael, the people of Beit Shemesh look into the Aron, thousands and thousands of people die. Now, the followers of Korach and Nadav and Avihu, it's true that they've transgressed a mitzvah of Hashem, but it also seems that they've crossed some kind of boundary in attempting to come close to Hashem, and that's the cause of their death. We know that a boundary has to put up around Har Sinai at Matan Torah so that people do not race up the mountain. When the Kohen Gadol goes into Kodesh Kadoshim on Yom Kippur, he is taking a risk. He may be pulled out of the Kodesh Kadoshim dead. There is something very dangerous about approaching Hashem. And how are we to understand that? What does that mean? Is there something in our lives today that we can point to that says that's what it means it's dangerous to come close to Hashem? So first, let me show you two thoughts that I've had in the past that I think are still worth sharing because I think they are related. One is I was thinking perhaps what was meant by the danger of approaching Hashem is connected to the Icarus myth. The Greeks have a story of a young man who flew too high. He was flying too close to the sun, and he plummeted to his death. And there is some connection here. That story does capture similar ideas. That's about ambition and the danger of aiming beyond too high, beyond your abilities. And there's certainly truth to that. The story is also about how one should not have ambitions too low. He's also told don't fly too close to the water. You should aim not too high, not too low. And there is something very true about dangers of coming too close to infinity in that sense. It's also connected with ideas of flow that seem to be popular today. That this idea that meaning is to be found in activities that engage us, that they're not too difficult, that turn us off, and they're not too easy that make us bored. That to be in the zone, to be properly engaged in the world, is some sort of middle path. And there may be some idea that it might be something relevant to the idea that we can only, say, approach so close when we go to the Beit HaMikdash, right? We should be approaching, but only so far. So some connection. The other thought I've had in the past is that there's something about the fact that we are biologically finite, and it is impossible for us to take in the infinite. We know that just takes, say, our vision. There's only so much of reality that we can take in, that we see with the spectrum of light that we see is a very small part of the electromagnetic spectrum. In general, our bodies, in terms of what we perceive of what's actually out there, is minimal. And even in what we can take in, we are constantly filtering. You may have seen this experiment online of people given a task in which they have to pay attention to how many times a basketball is being passed around, but did they see the gorilla in the room? Their attention was focused, and so they did not see what to an outsider might seem obvious, because as we go through the world, we are focused on our tasks, and we are constantly filtering out much of the information that is reaching our limited senses. And we know there's people who suffer, say, autism. One aspect of that is that people are unable to filter properly. People who cannot handle too much sound, too much light, fabrics of certain kinds rub them the wrong way. So there is something about we are finite and we cannot come in contact with the infinite, but still doesn't quite capture the idea that there is a threat to our lives, because it's hard for us to put ourselves in a sense situation where we're completely overwhelmed to the point of death, though I imagine perhaps that's possible. So what the direction I want to go is to suggest that what it means to say that Hashem is dangerous, it's the danger of the sacred, the danger of God, is that in confronting ultimate reality, God as transcendent reality, the truth of the world, it can completely undermine our identity, completely who we are. And I want to try and give some examples of this. And I'm going to start off by sharing a comedy sketch from a British comedy duo. You may have seen this. It's something of an internet meme. It may not seem at first like it's relevant, but I think it captures actually very nicely both the idea that confronting reality can kill us, and that there's still important reasons why we should still push forward and take that risk. So let me first share this clip with you.
Very well. They're coming. Now we'll see how these Russians deal with a crack SS division.
Hans?
Have courage, my friend.
Yeah. Hans, I've just noticed something.
These communists are all cowards.
Have you looked at our caps recently?
Our caps?
The badges on our caps. Have you looked at them?
What? No. A bit?
They've got skulls on them. Have you noticed that our caps have actually got little pictures of skulls on them?
I don't,
Hans, are we the baddies?
That's just part of the sketch. I'll put a link down below for the rest of it so you can see it. By the end of the sketch, not only has the character said Chatati, but it seems like he's done a complete tshuva and run off. But how would a person really confront the reality that maybe I'm the baddie, maybe we're the baddies? It's not something that a person will easily do. Of course, most of the Germans in that position probably saw themselves as involved in some sort of noble pursuit, following along with their great leader. To accept the possibility that they were monsters, to accept the possibility that they were involved in one of the greatest crimes in history, would be to completely undermine their sense of who they are. It would be to destroy their lives. How would a person truly react if they had that sudden change in perspective? And I don't know offhand how many Nazis actually did that kind of tshuva, but I did recently read a book by David Horowitz, Radical Son. David Horowitz is today a warrior on the political right. He grew up on the left, and this is the story of how he switched ideological affiliations. He grew up in New York City Jewish communist circles. And in this book, he describes what happened to his parents and many of his parents' friends in the 1950s when the truth of Stalin's Russia came out. Many people had been devoted for the cause for years and years. They saw themselves as idealistic people fighting the tyranny of capitalism, fighting for freedom, fighting for the working man. And in 1957, after Khrushchev came to power following Stalin's death, Stalin had a meeting, which was secret at the time, in which he had outlined what Stalin's crimes were and how the party was going a different direction. The Mossad smuggled news of this meeting out, and it made its way into Western papers. And when American communists saw in the paper what the truth of the situation was, many of them were devastated. And some of them were on the defensive, they were in denial, or they tried to rationalize what happened, but most of them could no longer deny the truth of what Stalin had done. They were not idealists at all. In fact, they had been supporting one of history's monsters. And their lives came to an end. The meaning that their lives had was gone, and these people were shells of what they were. They were destroyed in coming in contact with the truth, coming in contact with the reality of the world. They could not deny it anymore. So that's the idea I'm trying to get at here, that that reality can be too much for us, that truth can be too much for us, and perhaps we'd feel better not knowing what the truth is, and we protect ourselves. Let me give one more example of this. Recently reading about history of psychoanalysis. In the 1930s, early psychologists were trying to categorize different kinds of psychological ailments. Here's a distinction between a lesser and greater form of psychological ailment. Reich describes symptom neurosis versus character neurosis. Symptom neurosis is some point in your life something happens and now you're suffering in some ways that perhaps you're now fear going out because of some trauma, you feel fear going outdoors. So you come to the doctor and you say, this is my situation, please help me out. Patient and doctor are on the same page working on this problem together. But other patients, the psychologists were seeing other kinds of patients coming in describing problems, and the doctor could see what the issue is, but they're going to have to be cautious in what they say to the patient, because they know if they say the wrong thing, the patient's going to be on the defensive, because the patient and the doctor are not on the same page. The patient may perceive what the doctor is saying as an attack on them. They are being judged. They are being criticized. Their identity is being undermined. So the doctor is not necessarily on the same side, say, as the patient. There's this kind of conflict because the patient is going to have to not only try and solve a problem, but give up a piece of who they are. And that is a much more difficult kind of psychological problem to deal with than, say, just the symptom neurosis. This is a character neurosis. The person's identity is at issue. And so I believe this sense of it is dangerous to approach Hashem is connected to this, that the world is too much for us. Psychologists talk about how reality is too much, and we have defenses. And you can look online, there's whole lists of different ways human beings psychologically defend themselves against the world. And it's not just people have psychological problems. This is a normal way of how human beings interact with the world. We have to wall ourselves off. There has to be boundaries. The infinite is too much for us. And so there's many ways in which we try to protect ourselves from overstimulation or from the grief, from anxiety, all the things that can mentally disturb us and unbalance us, that could potentially take us down. The language that's used by some of these communists whose lives are undermined, right? They're experiencing a kind of death. Their lives are gone. What they stood for is over. And people who are going to a psychologist for a certain kind of problems, there's going to be an experience of some kind of death as well if they're going to try and they're going to have to try and change themselves and give up something. I'll keep that for the next video, the importance of confronting the unknown. But right now, let me just stick with this idea. This is what I'm trying to get at, that the world, we can't handle the truth, to quote Jack Nicholson, right? We can't handle the truth. And it is desirable to be the kind of person who can handle more and more of it, can handle more and more of reality, but we are finite creatures who potentially will find ourselves undermined if we come too close. In the next video, I do want to talk more about some different Torah topics, talk about what does it mean to say that I'm the baddie, what does it mean to do tshuva, what's at stake in doing tshuva, that tshuva requires sacrifice, and that sacrifice is korban, it's a kiruv, it is a coming close. I want to talk about Yitzchak, sort of a paradigmatic sacrifice that he is characterized in the Midrash as a phoenix rising from the ashes. That Yitzchak actually did die, and his ashes were on the Mizbeach and was reborn. And finally, let's talk about Matan Torah, that the counter of Am Yisrael with Hashem at Har Sinai is also a death and a rebirth. That death and life are connected, and to find life, one must die. And so there is a danger of approaching Hashem, but one must nevertheless come as close as one can. Anyway, I hope you might find something of value in this. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.